So, anybody who has gone to Wikileaks in the past, God knows when, knows that Wikileaks is down, and I haven't seen the actual diplomatic cables dump. I want to see it. I want to see it for myself. I want to read it. But of course, the U.S. government, and pretty much every single other fucking government, is being very, very censoring. Like, I cannot get onto WikiLeaks. Now, it's either denial of service attack, as WikiLeaks is saying, or it's censorship. I'd be more inclined to think the latter, with the way things are going right now. But let me the United States government condemned all this shit. Let me read you, and this might be 2 parts long because I'll be speaking for quite a while, exactly according to Wikipedia, which is a reliable news source. It's all on the WikiLeaks website. It's all sourced there. So, Commonwealth of Nations. Commonwealth Political Director Amitav Banerjee said a Commonwealth Ministerial Action Group, CMAG, would recommend a full suspension of Fiji. He also suggested a constitutional crisis would have followed the death of President Umaru Musa Yar'Adua. He further noted a succession question for the head of the Commonwealth, Queen Elizabeth II, that was on the back burner while she was alive, as there was no rule that stipulated the British monarch must be the head of the body. United Nations. Directives of the State Department ordered U.S. diplomats to gather intelligence on the UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon and top U.S. officials, including biometric information, passwords, and personal encryption keys used in private and commercial networks for official communications. At a meeting in 2006 between the U.S. legal advisor to the Secretary of State John B. Bellinger III and legal advisors of the European member states, Bellinger warned European states that supporting a Cuba-sponsored resolution at the United States Commission on Human Rights against actions in Guantanamo Bay would be a serious attack to U.S.-EU cooperation against terrorism and give the unacceptable impression that the EU was aligned with Cuba against the U.S. According to a cable, this is Afghanistan now. According to a cable from the American Embassy in Kabul, Ahmad Zia Massoud, Vice President of Afghanistan, was found carrying $52 million in cash that was ultimately allowed to keep without revealing the money's origin or destination. This discovery was made in the United Arab Emirates by local authorities working with the Drug Enforcement Agency. Hamid Karzai, President of Afghanistan, was described in one cable as having a paranoid worldview. A cable recounting meetings between American officials and Ahmed Wali Karzai in September 2009 and February 2010 offered the following warning. Note, while we must deal with AWK as the head of the Provincial Council, he's widely understood to be a corrupt and a narcotics trafficker. Noting several of Karzai's statements known to be false, the cables explain that he appears not to understand the level of our knowledge of his activities. We'll need to monitor his activity closely and deliver a recurring, transparent message to him. The U.S. military took 15% of the 50 million pounds in the German, or 50 million whatever's in the German government, gave to a trust fund to build up the Afghan National Army. After accepting 5 Chinese Muslims of Guantanamo Bay in 2006, Sali Berisha offered to take 3 to 6 detainees extra. American diplomats portrayed his offers gracious but probably extravagant. As always, the Albanians are willing to go to the extra mile to assist with one of our key foreign policy priorities, the cable said. Armenia. The 2010 diplomatic cable leaks revealed U.S. anger against Armenia for allegedly shipping arms to Iran. In late 2008, U.S. diplomats came to the conclusion that the government of Armenia had supplied Iran with rockets and machine guns in 2003, which were subsequently sent by Iran to insurgents in Iraq and used to kill American soldiers there. This allegation was denied by Armenian President Sergei Sargsyan. Cables contain an angry letter from John D. Negroponte to Sargsyan. Bosnia and Herzegovina. The French government pushed for the closure of the office of the High Representative, despite conditions not being met in opposition to the U.S. U.S. and Turkish officials pressured Haris Selajci, a former member of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, to ease his rhetoric and desist from using the word genocide in relation to the Serbs. Milorad Dodik, then the Prime Minister of the Republika Srpska, entity in Bosnia and Herzegovina, supported the Ahtisaari plan for the independence of Kosovo. Brazil. Samuel Pinheiro Guimarães, Brazil's former deputy foreign ministry, was described as an opponent which adopts an anti-American slant. The American embassy in Brasilia said Brazil prefers to arrest suspected funders of terrorist groups on narcotics and or custom charges in order to avoid the perception that terrorism is widespread in Brazil. High-level Brazilian officials will vigorously reject any statements that were implying that terrorists have a presence in Brazil. The embassy also stated that Brazil refuses to recognize the FARC, Hamas, and Hezbollah as terrorist groups, and in fact views the latter two as legitimate political parties. Brazilian Defense Minister Nelson Jobim confirmed an earlier rumor that the president of Bolivia, Evo Morales, is suffering from a serious sinus tumor. Activities of organizations at the Amazon rainforest and protection of oil reserves were considered paranoia since there were no international threats over them. Canada. Canadian Security Intelligence Service Director Jim Judd complained about Canada's court and the general public to the U.S. Counselor of the State Department, Elliot A. Cohen, in Ottawa on July 2, 2008. He ascribed an Alice in Wonderland worldview to Canadians and their courts, whose judges have tied CSIS in knots, making it ever more difficult to detect and prevent terror attacks in Canada and abroad. Judd commented that cherry-picked sections of the court-ordered release of the DVD of Guantanamo detainee a Canadian citizen Omar Khadr, who I want to be released, by the way, would likely show 3 Canadian adults interrogating the kid, who breaks down in tears. He observed that the images would no doubt trigger knee-jerk anti-Americanism and paroxysms of moral outrage, a Canadian specialty, as well as lead to a new round of heightened pressure on the government to press for Khadr's return to Canada. He predicted that Harper's government would nonetheless continue to resist this pressure. Judd is quoted as telling Cohen that Canadian spies had prior warning that an explosion at Sarposa prison in Kandahar, Afghanistan, was being planned by the Taliban. However, Judd stated that the spies could not get a handle on the timing. An investigation headed by Foreign Affairs Minister David Emerson, who into intelligence failures leading to the prison break, claimed Canada did not suspect an attack. Former Chief of Defense Staff Rick Hillier stated in a committee hearing that obviously we'd have liked to known so we could have preempted or helped. More accurately, the Afghans preempt that kind of thing. CSIS officers have been vigorously harassing known Hezbollah members in Canada. U.S. diplomats in Ottawa wrote to Washington that the CBC pushes insidious negative popular stereotyping with anti-American melodrama in its entertainment television programs, according to documents to be released by the website Wikileaks. People's Republic of China. A Chinese official revealed that both public opinion in China and the government are increasingly critical of North Korea, stating that China's influence in the North was frequently overestimated. The Chinese mentioned that they do not like North Korea, but they are a neighbor. A Chinese contact told the U.S. Embassy in Beijing that the Politburo of the Communist Party in China was responsible for instigating the January 2010 Google hacking incident, which is part of a wire-coordinated campaign of computer sabotage carried out by the government operatives, private security experts, and internet outlaws recruited by the Chinese government, targeting the U.S. and its Western allies. In February 2009, U.S. Ambassador to Kyrgyzstan spoke to her Chinese counterpart, Zhang Yanyan, after being notified that China had offered Kyrgyzstan $3 billion in return for the closure of Manas Air Base, an important U.S. base in Bishkek, handling flights into and out of Afghanistan. Visibly flustered, Zhang temporarily lost the ability to speak Russian and began spluttering in Chinese. He proceeded to ridicule the claim, avoiding a straightforward denial, and offered his own advice to the U.S. on dealing with the Kyrgyz to help the base stay open, during which his aide remarked, "Or maybe you should give them $5 billion and buy both us and the Russians out." Germany. A number of cables from the Berlin embassy reveal the U.S. concern on Germany's position in the SWIFT TFTP and the bilateral U.S.-Germany data sharing agreement. A revealing cable from December 2009, 09 Berlin 1528, describes how German Minister of the Interior Thomas de Maizière overruled Justice Minister Sabine Luetzer-Schnarrenberger and abstained from voting at the November 30th Coreper vote in Brussels on an interim U.S.-EU agreement to continue the terrorist finance tracking program. U.S. Embassy personnel were very critical of the German Foreign Minister, Guido Westerwelle. He is regarded as incompetent, and one cable ends with the comment, "He's no Genschwer." An embassy cable sent from Berlin on September 22nd, 2009 describes Mr. Westerwelle as having an exuberant personality, calling him an enigma who remains skeptical about the U.S. American officials sharply warned Germany in 2007 not to enforce arrest warrants for CIA officers involved in a bungle operation which Khalid al-Masri, an innocent German citizen with the same name as a suspected militant, was mistakenly kidnapped and held for months in Afghanistan. It is revealed that the U.S. had an informant in the coalition talks between the CDU and FDP for Cabinet Merkel II. FDP chairman Guido Westerwelle's chief of staff, Helmut Metzner, admitted that he gave regular information to the U.S. Embassy. German Chancellor Angela Merkel is called Angela Teflon Merkel, and it is said that she avoids risk and is uncreative. Honduras. A cable from the U.S. Embassy in Tegucigalpa, Honduras, definitely characterizes the June 2009 ousting of President Manuel Zelaya as an illegal and unconstitutional coup. The decisiveness of the cable was not reflected in Clinton's reluctance to use such terminology in public statements and the U.S. State Department's failure to cut off all aid save democracy assistance, as required by law in the case of a coup. The cable is also seemingly at odds with relatively rapid moves by the U.S., the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank to normalize relations with Honduras. India. A U.S. State Department cable called India self-appointed frontrunner for permanent UN Security Council seat. The U.S. State Department solicited biographical and biometric information on key NAM G77 OIC permanent representatives, particularly India and China. The U.S. conducted its own secret analysis of India's military contingency plans, which are codenamed Cold Start. India has said that if sufficiently provoked, it would mount a rapid invasion of Pakistan. The U.S. said in a cable that it doubted the Indian Army was capable of doing so. It is the collective judgment of the mission that India would likely encounter very mixed results. Indian forces would have significant problems consolidating international gains due to logistical difficulties and slow reinforcement. However, U.S. Ambassador to India Tim Raymer warned that for India to launch the Cold Start Doctrine would be to roll the nuclear dice. It could trigger the world's first use of nuclear weapons since the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Indian leaders no doubt realize that, although Cold Start is designed to punish Pakistan in a limited manner without triggering a nuclear response, the Indians cannot be sure whether Pakistani leaders will in fact refrain from such a response. To counter the Indian doctrine, U.S. diplomats in Islamabad were told that Pakistan was working on producing smaller tactical nuclear weapons, such as nuclear artillery, that could be used on the battlefield against Indian troops. Iran. The cables reveal some Arab distrust for Iran and encouragement from pro-U.S. Arab leaders for a military strike on the nuclear facilities in Iran. Saudi King Abdullah has repeatedly urged the U.S. to attack Iran's nuclear facilities. In one diplomatic cable, King Abdullah said it was necessary to cut the head of a snake, in reference to Iran's nuclear program. Mohammed bin Zayed, Crown Prince of Abu Dhabi, urged the U.S. not to appease Tehran and said, Ahmadinejad is Hitler. King Hamad of Bahrain was quoted in 2009 as saying, that program, the Iranian nuclear program, must be stopped. The danger of letting it go on is greater than the danger of stopping it. Major General Mohammed Al-Assar, assistant to the Egyptian defense minister, was quoted in saying in 2009 that Egypt views Iran as a threat to the region. U.S. intelligence has assessed that Iran obtained from North Korea advanced missiles derived from a Soviet design that are more powerful than the publicly admitted by the U.S. to be in Iran's possession. These missiles, designated the BM-25, have a range up to 2,000 miles, or 3,200 kilometers for your non-U.S. people. However, another cable that has received less attention from mainstream press describes the meeting of U.S. and Russian officials, where the latter dismissed the former's claims, pointing out technical flaws in the evidence presented and inconsistencies in the story.